So you want the best. This is probably why you're watching this review. The Virpil Control Panel certainly paints itself as the pinnacle of consumer grade electronics, and it certainly lives up to that at first glance, but nothing's ever perfect. Let's start off with the price. I paid $368 for this. Do I consider this expensive? Hell yes. If you're considering buying one of these, there's a 90% chance you're already deep into the sim world. Your passion is flight simulation and you appreciate electronics with a high level of build quality, design and finish. And that's what Virpil gives you. The Virpil Control Panel does most things brilliantly, and that's most things. And we'll get to that. Let's start off with the design and build quality. You cannot tell me this doesn't look great. I mean, look at it. It just looks and feels like money. Even under close inspection, it's just beautifully finished. I've been using this one for months, so there are a few little marks and fingerprints here and there, but when I first opened it, it was pristine. There's just so much attention to detail. I feel like whoever put this particular unit together did it with care and craftsmanship. It's also designed at the same size as the other control panels and the throttle, so if you decide to get more than just this control panel, they'll slot nicely in beside each other. So what do you actually get here? Aircraft status LEDs, 10 customizable RGB momentary buttons, which you have these sticker inlay sheets for. They just fit underneath the little glass plastic caps. You get 6 momentary toggle switches, 2 latched toggle switches. You get 3 encoder dials just across the middle here, and these encoder dials also have a push function, a click function. You get a multi-position landing gear lever, down, off, and up. And one thing that's great about the landing lever is you can unmount this portion and you can flip over the part that gives you that middle detent. So you can actually just slide it. If you did that, this isn't set up that way at the moment, but if you did that, you would slide straight from up to down. But I quite like the center detent, so I've left it as is. Now the physical size. The size is about 17 by 20 centimeters. Just for a bit of context, I'll just grab another mouse mat. All right, so here's like a typical standard size mouse mat. I don't know if you can see the size on camera too there. You might be able to see that. Excuse the marks on the mat, that's my coffee mugs. So yeah, so that's a standard sized sort of mouse mat just here. The overall size is pretty good. There's enough space for all the buttons. Nothing feels crowded. And it has these little metal guards in between the switches, in between these momentary toggle switches, sorry. And it's really nice. It's great for VR, you know, when you want to feel your way around the control panel. This coupled with the physical size, like I just said, it really does make it a great option for VR flight simmers. The layout of this control panel is, I think, is easy to feel your way around. Shout out in the comments if you run VR and use this control panel. It'd be helpful for others to know how you go with it. Okay, the switches. Now, I love a good switch. It's my pet hate when I spend good money on flight peripherals that have switches and buttons. Smaller things like the switches that can easily let a product like this down, but not this one. Everything just screams high quality. And the illuminated momentary switches are a real bonus. I've tried to set these up with the most common shortcuts that I use across all planes and simulators, like releasing the parking brake, switching modes from air to air to air to ground, and so on. You can even create your own custom labels for inside of those buttons, which I should be doing pretty soon. Now, as good as these illuminated switches are, they do come with a little bit of an issue. Maybe it's not so much of an issue, more of a warning. So when you remove the clear plastic keycap from the top, you have to insert a screwdriver and twist it. You insert the screwdriver into this little plastic slot and twist it. You gotta be careful when you're doing this. I've damaged a few of them. Now, it's nothing major, nothing that stops it from working. It's just bending and twisting the plastic a little bit, so be careful. Be gentle. All the other switches hold true to the rest of the build. They're just extremely high quality. The rotational dials are one of my favorites actually. They have really nice little notches in them. Every switch on the panel just feels great. I'm going to pause for a second and I'll run through the sound of the switches, which I think is quite important. Okay, moving on, the orientation. Now, you might be thinking, what the hell do you mean by orientation? You can actually unscrew the top cover plate from this and rotate it 180 degrees, thus changing the end that your cables route from. With features like this, they really are catering to the high-end flight simmer. The simmer who loves to tinker and customize with their setup. I don't know of any other product in the market that has this feature, and it's really useful. I can't go any further without mentioning the gear lever. The gear lever could be one of my favourite parts. It has a very pronounced detent in the middle. You have to lift the lever up a little to move it into this position. You can also change out this longer lever for the shorter one, which is also included in the original pack. But really, the cool thing about the gear lever is the mechanism. Now, I did touch on this a little bit earlier. So you can open this up, you can flip over the plate inside to take the notched detent away, and you'll get a smooth transition from down to up. I prefer having the middle detent, so like I said before, I've just left it there. I think this is an absolute masterstroke. Moving on to the mounting. Now, this will sit on your desk without budging. It's got a little bit of weight to it. It does come with these legs with rubber feet, which I have unscrewed. I'll see if I can find an earlier piece of video that I can show you with those feet on it. Just for my particular setup, you know, I whipped them off. But on a desk, it does sit pretty solid. Now, like I said there, I mounted mine to my extrusion cockpit, and I actually did this with some alien tape. Best tape you'll ever buy. I'll stick a link in the description for that. Moving on. I expect most people may need to purchase the mounting brackets from Virpil, and that's brackets, plural. It's my understanding that you need to buy 2 of these. You have to get the Virpil desk mount adapter and the Virpil desk mount V3 Mini, and that comes in around €60. Who knows how much for postage, so just bear that in mind. They do seem a little bit overly expensive for a bracket, but if the flight panel is anything to go by, they're going to be top notch. Again, just keep in mind that if you're ordering from the US, postage can be quite high. It's best to purchase everything you need at once. So what are the best sims suited to blowing this kind of money on a control panel? What simulations really benefit from a product like this? This control panel, as far as I'm concerned, is best for people that play DCS, IL-2, maybe War Thunder simulated battles with a hot ass. It's also very useful in Microsoft Flight Simulator and X-Plane, but it really shines with the combat style sims. I do know that it's quite popular with those space sims as well. I don't have any experience with space simulation, so I'm just going to comment on the flight side. But again, it shines with the combat style sims. This is also one of the main reasons I swapped out my Windwing F-18 panels for this. The F-18 panels, they're great, okay? They're great. And obviously, well suited to flying an F-18. But when it comes to flying a variety of planes, sometimes the control layouts can get a bit confusing for me. Hence, switching to the control panel. A more generic, configurable layout. Much better suited to me as I fly a few different like jets and GA planes. And I think there'll be a few people in that same sort of boat. Not everybody just flies the one plane. And that's where I found this quite useful. Again, when we're talking about the F-18 panels, obviously all those panels are marked out for specific actions in the F-18. So when you want to fly a different plane with it, yeah, you can easily configure it. You can configure all the switches to do what you want, but there's kind of a little bit of a disconnect there. Whereas something like this is so configurable, very easy to just dial in almost common buttons and shortcuts that you need in here. So how was the buying experience? The first thing you need to know before pulling the trigger on one of these is it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get your product. This was my experience, and as I understand it, the experience of many others from what I hear. However, the almost instant replies from inquiries that I sent through about the product were like amazing. Sometimes I'd even get a reply within the hour. These guys are just switched on when it comes to customer service. I just wish they would have been more open with the delivery times on their website. But to be honest, you kind of can see why they wouldn't be, because nobody really wants to wait 6 to 8 weeks. But all good things do come to those who wait, and that certainly rings true with Virpil controls. If you've had a different experience, let me know in the comments. Now it's time for the pros and the cons. So let's start off with the pros. It's an all metal build. It's extremely well finished. Like, extremely. High quality buttons and switches all round. The ability to rotate the face for custom setups. It's plug and play, more or less. Works great if you fly a variety of aircraft and simulations. The gear lever, it's a real highlight. It has 10 modifiable illuminated switches. And the cons. The illuminated switches can be difficult to get off. That's the clear plastic covers I was talking about earlier. So getting these off without damaging them can be difficult. It's not so much of a con, but it's just something to be careful with. One thing I do think is an actual con is the software is a bit cumbersome at first. It can be quite confusing. They do update it, so I'm sure it will keep getting better over time. And the final con, the delivery time. If you're thinking you're going to get this delivered in a week, it's not going to happen. Be prepared for 8 weeks. Overall, you need to have a deep love of flight simulation and deep pockets to even entertain spending money like this on what is just essentially a button box. But if you are that person and you appreciate quality and craftsmanship, then you will not be disappointed. It's hard to pick a fault with the Virpil Control Panel 2. It's easily my favourite piece of flight sim hardware, and the main reason being that it's just so configurable and the materials and the finish are just next level. If you play a few different sims, then the ability to lay button stickers underneath the illuminated panels, brilliant. The build quality is the best I've ever seen in any consumer grade flight sim button box by a long way. And I just, enjoy using it. Anytime I have to interact with the panel, I'm reminded of why I paid so much for it. It feels, looks, and works better than anything else in this category.